minded than some of the other people that Paul has brought the message to, in that they received the word of God with all readiness of mind. And more than that, not only were they open to the message of the gospel, but they weren't willing just to take it all on and trust. They were interested in hearing what Paul had to say and then match that up with what they already knew in Scripture. We talked a little bit about that last week. And it says they searched the Scriptures daily. Here was Paul not just bringing something, over time, sometimes in our Christianity, things sometimes get a little bit jaded. We're not as excited as we used to be. And we don't maybe spend as much time around the Word of God as we may have done when we first became Christians. And these people were, despite the Jewish background, despite the years they spent under Judaism, they were interested in the Word of God. Especially when somebody comes along and says, you realise that this passage means this, and today is the day. And so they searched the Scriptures to determine whether what was being told them was actually the truth or not. Every synagogue has Jews and God-fearing Greeks, including women who are prominent in society. And these Bereans are described as more noble in character than the Thessalonians because they were more careful Bible students. They're not going to accept any teaching that did not agree with the Scriptures, which at this time would have been mainly called the Old Testament. Paul taught them every day, and they checked everything he said against the Scriptures. So I think, when you're teaching, when you're preaching, to be appreciated, it doesn't happen very often. And usually, up to now, he's been stoned for his efforts. He's trying to do his best, and the best thing they've done is take him outside the city and give him a good beating. And thankfully, my audience doesn't work like that. But at least they're interactive, aren't they? You say something to us, we'll stone you. So at least he was getting some feedback. But in this instance, he was getting good feedback. And I don't know about you, but if ever you study with somebody, and it's almost, if you can see them, their eyes suddenly open up, you mean, that's for me? You mean, that's, wow! And if you see that excitement, you get excited about your faith again, because you see it through new eyes. Because you remember how it used to affect you. And when you see somebody else come to a knowledge of something for the first time, and they're excited about it, that's good for you. It builds you up. And that's what I think real Christianity isn't found in our church buildings every Sunday morning or Tuesday night or whatever. It's found when we're talking to people about Christ and we see their eyes open up in excitement about something of just like the man with the lost coin and these kind of people. When they see something afresh, and you see it afresh through their eyes. And I think that's where the excitement that Christianity comes from. That's sometimes, I think, also why sometimes we lose that sense of excitement, because we don't meet people like that every day. You talk to some people about Jesus and say, I'm not interested. That's boring. That's old stuff. We don't need that today. And you just go away depressed. But then when you find somebody actually says, wow, it's interesting, tell me more. And what you tend to do is you get a big shovel full of everything you know, try and ram it down, stop them before they get away. And of course you drown them with, we've got big grinders at work, and we recycle the plastic bottles. And it's very difficult for new packers to be told, feed it gently, feed it like a baby, give it a spoonful, and let it chew away, and then give it another spoonful. Because when the new packers, they have all this scrap and they think, we'll get it in here, bucketful after bucketful, and you can hear the machine go, oh! and that's what we sometimes do to people that, you're interested in Christ? Oh wow, we dump them with everything we ever knew, and they're going, oh! and then they go away, because you just overfed them too quickly. And so here, Paul, I think, got a lot of satisfaction in these people, because they were eager to hear. Apparently, well, Frank's been in some of these places, but apparently in some countries, you maybe pay it a half hour, 3/4 hour sermon, and you'll finish the sermon, and you'll still, right, more, and you won't get away. 2 hours later, you'll still be going, and they still want more. Isn't that amazing? Whereas in this country, Frank switched the lights off and went off. Time's up, let's go.
Everybody's glad.
Yeah, very true. But it's different, isn't it? In some countries they're hungry for the Word of God. We've lost that to a great degree. And that's a sad thing at the end of the day.
Yes, they should change that last sentence. Everything, they checked everything he said against the Scriptures. He didn't say a word against the Scriptures.
Yes, I suppose that's a check.
wrong,
But this is Scripture here, that's what he's saying, okay. And
we know what's meant.
He wasn't saying anything against the Scriptures.
No, but he was checking what he had said against the Scripture. Okay, I'll think about that one.
Think about it.
What would you put there instead?
Yeah.
Anyway, I won't do that because I'll mess up.
They checked the Scriptures to see if what he said was true.
Probably. Oh shit. Okay. In Berea is a thing stuck in a wall. You might have seen, one of you guys might have seen this. In Berea, the save the word of all the eagerness, examine the Scriptures daily to see these things are so. The word of God is a power, neither hell nor sin gainsay. Fruit and blessing abound in that life where it holds sway. That's stuck in a door in Berea, or a wall in Berea. I think it's because these Bereans were assured that Paul spoke the truth about Jesus, and many of them believed. These Bereans are a good example for us. We must not take everything a preacher tells us at face value. We must compare it with, that's a better word, compare it with Scripture. If it is not taught in Scripture, it must be rejected. When we teach, we should also encourage our students to compare what we teach with what the Bible teach with the Bible, and we should accept correction when we're wrong. Okay, modern Athens. Big old place, huh?
You don't have any fires there. It's not that modern because there's a bunch of fires there at the moment.
Yes, there's fires.
Okay, well, that's good. Haven't gone over to, well, they wouldn't need double central heating, would they?
No, all the rioting and everything that's going on.
Oh, I see. I didn't make that connection. Sorry, a bit slow.
It's all right.
Okay. So when the Jews insisted on the land of Paul was preaching the word of God, Berea went there to agitating the crowds and stirring them up. The brothers immediately sent Paul to the coast with Silas and Timothy stayed at Berea. The men who escorted Paul brought him to Athens and then left with instructions for Silas and Timothy to join him as soon as possible. So even in an instance of this, when everything's going well, the word's going out, it's Paul, and he's having wrecking havoc in our synagogues, and so the same old people who got him in trouble before, they came to cause more trouble when he was now in Thessalonica, so he had to leave, but the other two stayed behind. It's interesting that they've highlighted Paul as a ringleader, and they wanted to sort him out. Well, we know what happened last time he stayed, he got beaten up. But also, if he stayed, it takes pressure off the local congregation. If he leaves, it takes pressure off the local congregation. So local Christians don't get. Sometimes Christians left in the face of danger, sometimes not. How should staying or leaving be decided? Well, we could, in our day and age, we could go to Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Iran, any of these countries, and we could actually start talking to people about the Scriptures, and certain things would happen. Almost without fail, certain things would happen. You would be in danger of your life. At what point do you decide it's safe to speak to somebody, and at what point do you decide it's best to leg it? It's a decision you have to make. If you make a wrong decision, you may be in bad trouble.
Yeah, it's important that you don't say, oh, here's an open door because everybody's listening. You don't have to go, open doors don't mean you go through them.
Yes.
And yet, time and time again, you hear someone say, oh, there's an open door, as if you've got no choice but to go through. There are other considerations.
And sometimes you're okay because you might move on, but the family you stayed with, or the family you helped become Christians, they can be in real bad trouble when you moved on. It's very, very, very difficult. I mean, down through the centuries, there's always been Christians who have been, had their nails taken out and spent time in prison, all sorts, for the faith. And it's very difficult to know when to stay and when to go. Okay, Paul had to stay one step ahead of those who wanted to shut him up. Paul is always the one thereafter. Silas and Timothy can safely stay in Berea until they're ready to leave. Paul doesn't like to be alone. He sends word by those who escorted him to Athens for Silas and Timothy to join him soon. They, however, did not join him in Athens, but much later in Corinth. While Paul waits, he is distressed by all the idols. Not all the idol people. He wasn't talking about people with their job. He was talking about the idol worship. Because we're here at the famous, that's a good bright screen, isn't it? While Paul waited for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks as well as in the marketplace day by day, with those who happen to be there. As he did everywhere else, he teaches in the synagogue. He spends his days in the large marketplace reasoning about Jesus with anyone who will listen. Okay? Paul was...
You can still see those altars and idols in the Agora, even today.
Even today?
Even
Yeah.
today, yes.
They would say, they would call it art today. They wouldn't necessarily believe in it, say they believed in it, but instead it would be called art. Okay?
When we were in Athens earlier on, we found a lot of the shops had all kinds of religious paraphernalia that people would put in their houses.
Mm-hmm.
And there were loads of shops full of them.
There's a lot of countries like that. I've got a good friend who goes to Malta quite regularly. Well, actually, it goes though, the island off Malta. And practically every month at least, there's a huge religious procession. Everybody's involved, everybody does something, and then they go home and have a party, a real wild party. But it's just part of their life. Religious iconry or whatever you like. Is there a short word for it?
Like, I went to Lourdes, man. Yeah, that is unbelievable.
It's a seller's market, isn't it?
Like they come back from every shop sells everything.
Everything, yes. Well, while you're here, you might as well dip your hands in your pocket as well as in the
Incidentally, that marketplace would be the first place to which Paul would go when he came down from the north to Athens.
It would be that time.
That would be where he would enter Athens, at the marketplace.
Okay. That would be convenient for the people bringing the produce and stuff. Okay. New pluralism. People have the right to believe what they want and practice their religion, or they must affirm that all ways are equally valid. Why reject Greek religion? Okay, so Paul was in a situation where they had lots of statues, lots of different things. You can believe basically what you like. And if we missed one out, he's going to talk about the one you missed out, the unknown God. And he's going to say, no, he is the one true God. But even today, we get that fired at this. You know, you just believe what you like. It doesn't matter. You know, heaven's a big football stadium, and we go in different doors, and God's, going to be all right for us. And that would include the Jehovah's Witnesses who don't believe in Jesus as God. It would include the Mormons who believe everybody is God eventually, will become God eventually. It includes everybody. It doesn't matter what you believe, according to a lot of people. And the PC correct in our modern world, you can't tell somebody, I think what you believe in is wrong. I think you've got it wrong there. You can't say that because, leave them to their own faith and stuff. So things don't change in over a lot of time. The man who escorted Paul Burndown and left him instructions for blah, blah, blah. He was greatly distressed to see the city full of idols, it says. Dionysus, the liquid fire in the grape, the blood pounding in the veins of a young animal, all the mysteries and uncontrollable tides which ebb and flow in the life of nature. Of course, a lot of them used to do animal sacrifice and drink the blood. And he was one of the biggies in that day. He also says, worship involved wild, drunken sex orgies. Ritual prostitution was common, and later became who we know as the Roman god Bacchus. Party lover, or something to do with wine these days. Yeah, Bacchanalian wild wine festival type things. Okay, so this is now that's my type of religion. A lot of people would say. Okay, that would spice life up, wouldn't it? And we're getting in a lot of trouble, I think. Anyway, let's go. Okay, we're done on. Your idol doesn't exist. Your worship is immoral. Your idol can't save. It can't even promote fertility or ferment wine. Of course, a lot of the stuff with idol worship was meant to do with the change in seasons and the prosperity of the harvest and all that type of stuff. It's false, it says. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to dispute with Paul. Some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked, he seems to be advocating some foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Athens was noted as should be an centre of philosophy. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Epicurus were just a few of the famous philosophers who had taught here. So these people were very familiar with, well, actually, in the day they were called the thinkers of their time, the Greeks, and hopefully some are still thinking today. Epicureans, they denied that God created the world. They denied God's providence. They said that the soul is material and is destroyed at death. Their motto was, eat, drink, and be merry. This part here, well, that one there anyway, to be as Jehovah's Witnesses, modern Epicureans. They wouldn't say eat, drink, and be merry because they're pretty miserable, most of them. Anyway, that's not true. The Stoics said the existing universe is God, that the soul dies, virtue has its own rewards, vice has its own punishment, and their motto was you need to deny self. So they get two polarized views here, and these people were both discussing, or should I say, what's a better word, arguing with the Apostle Paul. What is this babbler trying to say? One translated babbler is an interesting word in the Greek. It literally means this seat picker or seat picker. They were implying that Paul was an eclectic, that's a good word, philosopher, picking up elements of his philosophy from many different sources, much as a bird hunts everywhere for seeds and eats them. Foreign god would be any god not in the Greek or Roman pantheon. They were familiar with the Egyptian gods, but Jesus was a new god to them. Okay? That's an interesting word, eclectic. Just means gather of ideas from all sorts of different backgrounds and places. First time I came unstuck with it, I was familiar with the Greek word, ecclesia, called out, and I was talking to a headmaster in a school one time, and I was a little bit younger than I am today, and he said, would you call yourselves an eclectic group? And I said, eclectic group, you know, and of course we would be, because we are made up of all different backgrounds, people from all different cultures and backgrounds, so we are eclectic. So if you ever get a headmaster asking any question, please know the answer now, alright? View of Athens from the Arabic. How do you say that? Areopagus, yes. When I get my new teeth next year, I'll be alright.
Can I have your old ones?
They took a broader meeting with Areopagus where they said to him, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we want to know what they mean. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. A bit like a gadget show, really. Okay? If a tabloid newspaper had been printed in Athens, it would have had a large circulation. These philosophers and many others had slaves to do their menial tasks, so they could spend all their time hearing and discussing the latest news and gossip. They also liked to argue. The Areopagians, or members of the Areopagus, had regular meetings to hear and discuss the latest ideas. Their meeting place was on top of the hill of Ares. The Roman name for Ares is Mars, and in some translations it's called Mars Hill. Close?
It's nothing but just a lump. It's not a big hill at all.
A mound.
It's a few steps and you're up it, really.
Okay.
It's just a little hill.
Preacher. Because a lot of these places are good acoustics right there with the clear wouldn't you?
If it ever was big,
I will look at 2000. Probably double correct. People have been probably taken away and come on holiday. I stood where Paul is, and I'll have some of that.
I stood where Paul was.
Did you big spin tonight? No? Okay. Paul stood up in a meeting with the Areopagus and said, men of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. Apostle Paul, obviously he didn't want people throwing stuff around him right away, so he starts off with a compliment, which is a backhanded compliment in some ways, but he says, he does see in them, you are religious. I'll give you that. And sometimes we can definitely say that to lots of people, because a lot of people are religious. They do things religiously. I pass one president every time I go to work. He's out religiously polishing his car. I see you're very religious. Anyway, but as I walked around and looked carefully at an object of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. Now, what you worship as something unknown, I would like to proclaim to you. Okay? So he fortunately, I mean, we wouldn't have had this sermon if they hadn't done a study to an unknown God. They were just covering their bets. No, we're going to study to this one, that one, that one. But what if we missed one out? Well, we'll stick up one here to the unknown God, the one we missed out. And Paul comes along and says, I see you're going to study to the unknown. I'll tell you about him. And I'll tell you he's bigger and better than all the other ones put together. That's what he goes on to say. Greek historian Pausanias said that there were more idols in Athens than in all the rest of Greece combined. Like Paul would have seen idols virtually everywhere he went. That's from the people of the New Testament. A stone altar. The Athenians were indeed very religious. If they had an altar, that's not very good text, is it? I'll have to change the background on that one. All the others were named and dedicated to particular gods, but this one, an altar to an unknown God, provided Paul with an opportunity to tell them about his God. I'm sure these philosophers had heard about the God of Israel, but like so many in the ancient world, they thought this God only belonged to a small country at the far end of the Mediterranean. Because we, in our 2,000 years after Christ, we're looking at Israel, the history of Israel, the Bible, Jesus, in a world context. Whereas in his day, Israel would be just a little out-of-the-way country, unimportant for many different reasons. And as far as Greece was concerned, or Rome was concerned, Israel would be nothing. Just a bunch of trouble for the Romans. So we see this historical aspect from a different perspective. We think, well, why didn't they know about Jesus? Why didn't they realise how big God was? Because to them, it was something, in the middle of nowhere, not really worth worrying about until they got into trouble. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "Men of Athens, I've seen in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God." So he looked at their culture, he looked for an opportunity. And Paul was interesting because when he found a link, when he found a bridge, if you will, then he used that bridge. And Jesus did the same. Jesus used the everyday surroundings that people were familiar with to bring them from the physical quite often to the spiritual. Jesus had the ability to take people from where they were and to where he wanted them to be. And the Apostle Paul, I believe, carried on that tradition. The Apostle Paul started from where they were and then built that bridge to bring them to where he wanted to be, to help them to know about the Jesus. So he takes them out of an unknown, almost an unknown culture, but a small culture, and he bridges the gap between their huge idolatry with all these huge statues, and he begins to tell them about, here's one, you have made reference to it, now I want to tell you all about him. So he understands the background of the culture of the people he's talking to, and he uses that as a bridge. So he discovers common ground. Sometimes when we today talk to people about Jesus, especially in our culture now, where they haven't had Sunday school background, they've had evolution pumped down their noses since they were born, and we come along and say, "Hey, have you heard about Jesus?" And they say, "Who cares?" We're on totally different ground from a lot of people, and therefore we expect them to listen to what we have to say when they're not interested. They don't see the relevance of it. Often when you teach people, it's interesting, at school, how many children go to school and say, "Well, have you gone today?" "Oh, it was boring." We talked about Irish history. We talked about, Africa. And I'm not interested. And yet, maybe 15 years later, that person will get the opportunity to go to Ireland or go to Africa and say, "Oh, I wish I'd taken more in. Could you teach me again now? That's what I need it now." Often we're taught something, we don't see the relevance of what we're taught until we're actually there. And that's so a lot of times when we're being taught something, we think, what's the point? That's boring. It's only when we come into a bigger context that you say, I wish I'd opened my ears more. I wish I'd paid more attention. Because now I see the importance of this particular element. Okay? So he carefully studied the culture and discovered the common ground, made that bridge between them, and then he was able to talk to them. That's from the Hubble telescope. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by hands. He is not served by human hands as if he needed anything, because he himself gives all men life and breath and everything else. They could immediately see that the God Paul described was very different from any of the other gods. He is the universal God who created all things. If you ever go to Tibet, which you probably, on holiday or something like that, go to some of their temples and things, you'll be amazed at all the food that's placed before the Buddhas and the statues. Now I'm sure, when it goes dark, the Buddha gets off his pedestal and goes down and a good old feed. Yeah, that's probably why. Yes, that's why he's going to have it. People who are maybe not involved in that think, why waste all that food? Because quite often a lot of people are starving, and they've given probably they've really restricted themselves in order to give something to the God of this that they believe in, something physical, and the God will never take any advantage of it. And we think it's crazy. But a lot of waste, because their concept of the God is seen in that object. And exactly the same thing was happening in Athens. Paul probably had seen lots of people. When I was in Bali, their name dropping. When I was in Bali, the Hindu festivals, one of them was on one weekend, and I had the privilege of going into a little village where practically all the village ladies were doing this really intricate artwork with fruit and leaves and all sorts of stuff that was going to be presented at the festival. And they were beautiful stuff. And because they believed that this was an offering to their God, basically. And Paul would be familiar, I'm sure, of that type of thing happening in Athens. But Paul says, look, he doesn't need anything from us as far as that's concerned. He doesn't need an apple, or an orange, or even an apple pie. I do, but he doesn't. The universal God, he's the God. He doesn't really need the physical things that we can give him. And therefore there's a huge difference, because he created all things.
But no, like, is it the same before Jesus came along and people sacrificed stuff and all that? No one was allowed to eat it, were they?
No, well, in the Jewish culture or non-Jewish culture?
In the Jewish one.
In Jewish culture, what they would tend to do is they would give so much of it as like a burnt offering, or depending on what the sacrifice was. So much would be given that way, and then the priest would be allowed to have the rest, and they could actually eat the rest, or they can sell it and make a living on it. So the sacrifice system for some of the priests were pretty good living, actually.
The sacrificer himself got part of it.
Yeah.
As
a bonus. So I mean, there's a lot of
anything out of it, did they? The people who...
The people, no. In Jesus' time, they were the ones being conned. Remember the situation where they would bring along the lamb, and we travel for quite a distance to get there, and the old priest went and say, ooh, kick the tires, and say, that's a pretty rubbish looking thing you got there. No, that's not good enough for sacrifice. What you need to do is buy one of ours. And so the poor guy said, well, what are you going to do with my lamb? So, oh, we'll take it off your hands. Of course, it goes down in the same pen they're getting theirs out of, because it's going to be sold to somebody else. You know what I mean? They ripped off the people, and Jesus was really cheesed off by that. And that's often what happens. Something was meant to, under the Jewish system, sacrifices were meant to point to the ultimate sacrifice that was to come. They weren't a placation to God, but they were something that would teach the people that sin was serious, and that one day there will be a sin bearer. So it's slightly different. So every sense that God who created all must be adequate to have done. God's got to be big enough. If you had a little God who stayed, the size of this thing, and was unable to create much more than was inside this room, you've got the wrong God. Your God is going to be bigger than what he creates. And therefore God's capable of creating a universe. One true living God. Verse 24 says, God made the world and everything in it. God is not some object made by hands of men. There weren't many gods who made the world like the idolaters believed. There was only one God, one true God. Isaiah back in the Old Testament, in mocking the idolatry of the people of their day, he says, you go into the woods, you bring out cut down a tree, you cut it in half, you chop one half and you put it in your fire to keep you nice and warm. You go to the other side, you carve a nice piece of a statue and you stick that up, and then you bow down and worship. He says, You bow down and worship in something you've made. And that's just illogical, unreasonable. He says, this one, our God, is the one who made all. And that's the one we need to worship. God is Lord of heaven and earth, thus he doesn't dwell in temples made by men. Okay, he is bigger than the universe, he's inside and outside it. No, I must press that twice. Get back. No one can make an adequate representation of him, and they must not think he can be confined in the temple. Paul expresses the self-sufficiency, there's some big words here, the omnipresence, the omniscience, the omnipotence, the eternality of God, as well as his love, his providence for his creatures. They had never known a God like this. To them, he really was the unknown God. And when we talk to people about God today, quite often the whole concept of God is bigger than they can imagine, and therefore it's too much for them to accept.
What does omniscience mean?
All-knowing, omniscient, all-knowing. There are a few big words. Frank will tell you what all they mean. Omnipresent, present everywhere at once.
I know that one.
All-knowing, omniscience. Omnipotent, all-powerful. Eternally, part of his eternal nature. He has no beginning, he has no end. We are everlasting, we have a beginning, and we will last forever, everlasting. God in Matthew 25. Well, anyway, whatever. Anyway, okay. So that's the unknown God. The transcendence of God. God is over and above anything that they could imagine or even think of. And one of our problems, especially I think today, is we would love to make God so small that we can understand him, we could take him apart, we could put him on a shelf and say, I know all about God. You know, we want to put God into our terminology, our size, so we can define him and know all about him. But if we could do that, he wouldn't be God, and we would be gods instead. But he's far bigger than we can ever imagine.
I think what you should change that to the transcendency of God. That God is above everything. That means that there is something that is above God. The transcendence of God is that which is above God. The transcendency of God is above everything. It should have a wire. It should be an adjective, Graham. Really.
Okay.
The transcendency of God. The fact that God is above everything. If you said that so-and-so transcends God, well, that transcends God, you see.
But that's saying that God...
Yeah, transcend. It's
God
the
is above,
transcendency of God, not the
Right.
transcendence.
All right, I shall...
Really, I mean, if you're going to, you know...
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but
No problem, that's okay. My nouns and my whatever are not that brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. From one man he made every nation of men that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he determined the time set for them and the exact places where they should live. God did this so that men would seek him, and perhaps reach out to him and find him, for he is not far from each one of us, for in him we live and move and have our very being, as some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Okay? So some people down through time recognize there must be something bigger than us.
Verse 26 is a problem. He determines the time set for them and the exact places where they should live.
That's interesting,
That's
isn't it?
not a United Nations. Distinct territories for the different peoples.
Yes, yes.
We want everybody lumped together.
I have a problem with that, but that's okay, yeah. That is one of the difficult passages, isn't it?
No,
Does that mean you can't...
Not if you believe it.
Well, that means that you can't marry some different race. You know, yes, interesting.
Political correctness doesn't believe that.
Certainly wouldn't. And how does that fit in now with Christians, in Galatians, where, you know, there's neither bond nor free slave. We're all one in Christ Jesus.
Yes, we
as
are
far
all
as
one. Spiritually are all one.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they said we should be living together.
I'll let you talk to Frank later about that.
We see the problems that are created by trying to make Muslims and Hindus and Christians live in a neighbourhood. It doesn't work. It creates problems.
No, we should make more Christians, should we? How about this one then? The immanence of God.
Immanence of God. That God is everywhere present.
He's not far from each one of us. He's immanent. He is there. Okay? That's a good thing to remember when you're struggling. You think nobody understands. Nobody knows what I'm going through in my own little place. God is not far from. Matter of fact, later on, or earlier on, Jesus said, and later on it's highlighted again, He is within. So God is never far away from us because He lives in us, and we just have trouble remembering that. And sometimes in certain places we find ourselves, we wish that He was further away than He is. Oh, goodness gracious me.
We're all going after.
Yes, they're all going off.
Yeah.
Okay, that must be about time actually.
It is.
So Paul found that all people descended from Adam, that God determined where they would live and how long they would live there. This is scripture-related idea in Deuteronomy 32 verse 8. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when He divided all mankind, He set up boundaries for the peoples according to the numbers of the sons of Israel, or sons of God.
They upset that at the beginning when they made Babel.
Well,
That's what they wanted. They wanted the United Nations.
Babel.
Yeah,
And it's coming back.
That's what we've got today, the new Babel, in the European Union.
Okay. The hand of God in the universe. We'll hold it there.
Okay.
Okay. Frank, lead some. Okay. So we finished chapter 17. You may not realise that. We finished chapter 17 last week, where Paul was in Athens, and we saw him take on the might of Athens with the intellectual people of his day, and some success, but mainly he didn't really dent their philosophy, and that was seen sometime later as we go on. So now he's going to move on to a place that is totally different to Athens, where Athens could be seen as the intellectual centre, where all the great philosophers, and for many hundreds of years, great philosophers had come from the Greek-speaking world, and so many of them had been passed through Athens, or even spoke in Athens in time past, and an educational centre. But having said that, we now move on to the more physical, if we like, the more, it's a bit like going from, shall we say, Oxford and Cambridge to maybe Liverpool, or somebody will shoot me for that, but never mind. Glasgow, as was before it became a cultural centre. Down the Gorbals, they would recognise Corinth 50, 60 years ago in Glasgow. There would be quite a home in Corinth, because there are a number of things that are going to come up as we look through it. But here's a difference. People here, as is most metropolitan cities, more worldly than those in smaller cities in the heartland. Later Paul will write 2 letters to the Christians in the city, chiefly to correct their many problems. Okay, so we look back and sometimes idolise the Christians of the first century, thinking they had it easy, they had no problems. They don't know what we're going through. And yet, when you think about it, most letters to the New Testament are written to help Christians to deal with the problems who are part of their lives. So it's an interesting facet. Corinth was about 45 miles southwest of Athens. It was the capital of Achaia and the chief city of the province. It was a key city as it stood on the isthmus that connected southern Greece to northern Greece. This isthmus was 5 miles wide. It was called the Bridge of Greece, as all north and south travel went through it. Also, it was a bridge by a sea which connected the Saronic Gulf with the port of Cenchrea to the Corinthian Gulf with its port of Lycium. Many cargoes were carried here as it saved a voyage from some 300 miles round about. So it was a shortcut across the land, which was like a land link, a very short land link. People, sometimes you actually used to drag boats between, to say going 300 miles round, you actually physically drag the boats over this land isthmus to the other side. So the city of, today there's a canal cut it through it, connecting the Ionian Sea and the Aegean Sea, but in Paul's day there was no such canal. The city of Corinth was built about 146 BC by the Roman general Mummius for an anti-Roman revolt. Obviously Corinth, the usual, they fought up against Rome, and Rome fought back and said, right, we're going to make a fort here and keep you guys under control, basically. It was also a very wicked city. The classical Greek, in a classical Greek act, to be a Corinthian means to practice fornication, or to Corinthianize was to be a drunkard. So you'd get the drunkard staggering across the street. He was the nominal Corinthian. But I suppose we're much the same today. In the old days, you used to talk about Glasgow in that way. Some of these actors was some parts of Scotland.
Maybe that's why they named the pub in Corbett there in the town.
In the Corinthian, yes, the Corinthian, yeah, the Corinthian, that's right. So obviously a classical Greek scholar or a religious scholar.
Somebody, yeah. When he
So,
was sober.
yeah, when he was sober. The classical Greek actor. Okay, I think on this hill stood the temple of Aphrodite, with its 1,000 priestesses who were sacred prostitutes. They contributed to the wickedness of the city as immorality was practiced in the name of religion. So in some cases, not much change. Into the city came Paul, the apostle. He came out from Athens and came to Corinth. It says in verse 1. A wise man learns from experience, as often said. So if that is true, the apostle Paul learned from his experience in Athens. If you compare the sermon he did as he preached in Athens with other recorded sermons, you'll realise it really is quite different. In Athens, he appealed to their intellect. He quoted from their prophets and their poets. He quoted from the areas that they would be familiar, and tried to bridge a gap with them into the Christ religion from that, and preaching to the unknown God. But in there, many said basically he just got mocked because he was this little guy from nowhere, and they were really the intellectuals of the age, and therefore who are they to listen to this little seed pecker, this little seed babbler? And so the Mars Hill sermon, by many people would say, is not quite so effective as it could have been to the intellectuals there. So he comes to Corinth, and in Corinth it's a totally different situation. In Romans chapter 1, in Corinthians chapter 1, he talks in terms of the foolishness of the cross, the foolishness of preaching. He talks about the wisdom of God, of the world, as opposed to the foolishness of the cross. He talks about the power of the Roman Empire as against the crucified stumbling block of Christ, and for the Jews the huge stumbling block of the victorious person they were looking for, seen as hung on a cross. So the foolishness of preaching he talks about, as opposed to the intellectual appeal to the intellectualism that he had done in Athens. Where's my mice? Okay. So there's your modern canal. That wouldn't have been there in Paul's day. But
Is that the one it's man-made cut through?
yeah, we just chop. There's quite a few of those canals being made in different parts of the world to chop through things, and that was one of the early ones.
Photographs of that, really.
You could photograph. That's Paul sent me that.
Did you?
Yeah. It's interesting with all the global warming, the Northwest Passage that people used to search for out and is beginning to open up. So they're looking for maybe ships going through there to be able to carry all the oil they want to bring out of that part of the world. Anyway, so yes, Corinth is, as some parts of the day, the isthmus with skids built over. So in the old days, instead of a channel cut through where the boats can now sail up, they would actually have physical skids and help these boats cross over. If you ever go to Fox and Locks, there's a similar idea there, but not obviously the same 5 mile distance there. You've got where the canals built up, the canals go up the side, but to speed things up, they put in the inclined plane, and where the boats would come along, and on these rails that go down the hill into the next bay, they would put the boats down their side with big ropes hold them in place on like a carriage format, and take them from the high river or the high canal system into the river system down the bottom. So they were there first. You know, the principle of moving.
You can still see those ruts in the road.
Yeah.
You can still see them, actually.
Yeah. It's interesting, if you ever read any of the history of the Normans and the Vikings and people like that, they were tremendous guys with boats. Not only would they sail on the sea, But if they got to a place where there was no, where they wanted to go, there was no water, they would just basically lift the boats and shift them to where they wanted them to be and took them across areas. In Russia, a certain part of Russia, there's a population there from the Viking times, and they must have carried these boats over miles and miles and miles to get to where they wanted to be in that part of Russia. So it's a fascinating thing. So nothing's new, or very little is new. We may have repackaged it today, but really some of the basic principles are still there. Somebody said that the fast railway system was built about something like 400 BC. I'm not quite sure the exact date, but it's early BC with the railway system. Of course, they didn't have trains, as in choo-choo trains, but they had rails and they ran carriages along the rails, probably pulled by horses and stuff. They have a trade centre. They had a trade centre. Were very wealthy. They went and had a learning centre, which they needed. But you got a lot of input from different people here. You had a cultural come together, and that brought its own particular problems. So religious pluralism, that means you could worship anything you wanted, really. You could find something to worship if you enjoyed. Demeter and Bacchus, the cult, that deals with, Bacchus is always dealing with party time. That'll be quite popular in a couple of weeks' time. Many people will be indulging in the cult of Bacchus, though they don't really know it under that form. But that's basically what we're up to. Aphrodite temple, that's real, the prostitutes used to come down from the city. They would pick up the babies left, because little girls would often be unwanted, and they'd be left out in the streets, and these temple prostitutes would come down, pick them up, take them back, train them up as priestesses, and this starts the religious worship later on. People indulging in their religion would have had sex with their own daughters, because they wouldn't know them, of course. They'd been brought up as temple prostitutes, so they wouldn't have seen them since they were out in the street as a little baby. So they wouldn't know the background of the children that they were having sex with. Mystery religions, all sorts of cultic stuff was going on in this place called Corinth. So in summary, alcohol